Well, yet another banker has died under mysterious circumstances. It'll be the seventh in just under a month. So do these mysterious banker deaths point to a looming financial crisis or something more sinister, like a methodical silencing of anyone who could potentially blow the whistle on financial fraud? Well, today I'm going to be speaking with Doug Hagmann of the Hagmann and Hagmann radio show. He's a 30-year multi-state licensed private investigator, and you can read his articles on HomelandSecurityUS.com. And today I'm going to be speaking with him about his most recent article exposing what lies beneath the bodies of dead bankers and what lies ahead for us. Thank you for joining us, Doug.
Thank you for having me.
So can you just sort of recap some of these banker deaths and tie in how they're all related?
Not a problem. What we've seen here of late, beginning in the first part of the year, is it began with the disappearance of a reporter working for the Wall Street Journal at the Dow Jones desk. And now this gentleman went out for a walk on a Saturday. He disappeared without a trace. They still have not found him yet. Of course, he's a recipient of a liver transplant and is in need of medication. His family has had no contact. So this gentleman's been missing for over a month. Then we move right into a number of people who are interrelated in the financial industry. You've got Tim Dickinson, the UK-based communications director at Swiss Re. You've got William Brooksmith. You've got Carl Slim, Gabriel McGee, and others, all of whom are related to or have some associated with these various large central banks. It seems to focus, or at least the epicenter of all this appears to be J.P. Morgan. Now, in my investigation, what I found out a couple of things. If we go back in time, for example, if we go back into 1974, perhaps one of the first more modern suicides, if you will, is that of Louis Boyer, who happened to be an informant who gave some information about the gold, the commodities, but the gold specifically in Fort Knox. And, of course, she was later identified as the informant of a story about the missing gold in Fort Knox. She, come to find out, was a secretary to Nelson Rockefeller on July 3rd, 1974. She allegedly leapt to her death from the 10th-story high-rise in New York City. So looking back here 40 years ago, you're looking at a similar situation as we're seeing today. Now, today, you've got this litany of missing suicided bankers now. And I use suicide as a verb intentionally. But from my investigation, what we're seeing is this interrelation of all of these people who have allegedly committed suicide or have met their untimely demise. And there are a few common denominators here, one of which is, of course, the commodities market. Another, of course, is their placement within the financial system. And the third aspect, and I think this is a very important aspect, is the current state of surveillance that's in play here, that's being used by the very banks that are under investigation for numerous frauds, including but not limited to commodities trading or commodities frauds. These banks are actually conducting surveillance in tandem with, if people can believe this, in tandem with the NYPD and, of course, our intelligence agencies both here and abroad. And that includes the CIA here, as well as the MI5 and MI6 in the UK. And what we're seeing is a very efficient use of surveillance that not only identifies, I call them problem children, in terms of potential leakers or actual leakers or whistleblowers, and of course, being able to silence them and make it look, for example, as a suicide or at least an unresolved death. You've got one death here, of course, that people are aware of, where one gentleman had reportedly committed suicide at his own hand by shooting himself several times in the head, neck, and torso with a nail gun. Now, 30 years as an investigator, I've conducted many investigations about suspicious deaths. I've seen some pretty odd deaths, but nothing to that extent. So it seems to be becoming more blatant. What we're seeing is becoming much more blatant than we've ever seen before. So that tells me, as an investigator, based on my experience, that we're looking at something. We're looking at a cleanup operation. My sources are telling me it's a cleanup operation. My sources are telling me there will be more, and I'm on record as saying, as recently as last Friday and again on yesterday during my radio program, that there will be more, and we can expect more of these kind of deaths. So this is what we're looking at in a larger sense.
Right, and historically, during the Great Depression, we've heard of banker suicides. But here it seems to be more of a methodical silencing of people with inside information, right, who could expose fraud, financial fraud. A lot of financial fraud scandals are out in the open now.
Exactly, and I understand people's interest in comparing the suicide or the depression, the suicides that took place then with today. I understand that mentality to do so. I think it's an entirely different paradigm. I think it's an entirely different matter. Whereas before they were committing suicides for the most part based on the losses that they either incurred or caused others to incur. Today, this is a preemptive tactic by the big banks. This is what my investigation, this is what I conclude based on the information I'm getting from my sources, and I certainly would stand by that via my investigation.
So would you say that this isn't a looming financial crisis? It's not an indicator of that, but it's more so silencing of potential whistleblowers?
Well, you know what? I think it's both, and I think that's a very interesting perception. I think it's both. I think that this is indicative that we're reaching the end of the line with respect to the fraud, with respect to the being able to cover this up. These are very blatant, interrelated suicides, deaths, disappearances. So this portends something in the, I would say, in the future. Now, I don't know when, whether it's a week, a month, a year, but I do look at this as a cleanup operation that they're attempting to silence. In my view, they're attempting to silence these people. They're attempting to, whether these individuals stumbled upon information or had information, whether they were known to be a problem or discovered recently to be a problem. But I do believe that this is part and parcel to a larger agenda. And that agenda is to kill the U.S. dollar, to establish a one world economic system. They've got to do this, and they've got to get the United States out of the way. And the other thing is, too, they've got to get the people, the whistleblowers, out of the way. So I think that this is a multifaceted situation that we're looking at. There's not one easy, simple explanation. You've got to look at this from different perspectives, and there I think you'll find that we're facing, in my view, a major financial reset. It's on a global scale. This is all about covering their bases. You see, they're on a time schedule, and to them, when they, and I'm talking about the power brokers, want to bring down the economy, they want to do it on their schedule. They don't want to be exposed or do it on someone else's schedule. So this is part and parcel to that larger agenda.
Right, and it's very interesting what we're seeing a lot on the news now. They're really pushing about how vulnerable our infrastructure is and the grid, and how vulnerable we are to a cyber attack. And it's interesting how you point out that JP Morgan and banks are backing this huge surveillance system that's in place.
Not only backing it, which you're correct, but they are through our taxpayer money, in America here, through our taxpayer money, at 55 Broadway, JP Morgan, other big banks, they've got this huge row of computer monitors that are staffed by JP Morgan Chase and other financial institutions' security operatives. So what we're looking at is, not only is the police or the intelligence services conducting surveillance of every square inch of Wall Street, of Lower Manhattan, and the city of London, but their intelligence agencies, or the banks, are actually doing so as well. So there's an unprecedented level of cooperation and interaction. Well, it is precedented, or there is precedent there if you look back in Germany with respect to Nazi, pre-Nazi Germany, with respect to the surveillance, of course, without this type of technology.
Right. Well, it's interesting. You'd think with all of that surveillance, they'd be able to give a little bit more information into the disappearance of the Dow Jones reporter.
Well, now the Dow Jones reporter did disappear in New Jersey. He went for a walk on a Saturday afternoon and did not return. So that's a little bit different. That didn't take place in downtown Manhattan, but that's a very interesting case in and of itself. And we of course offer our prayers for the family members and the families of all these victims, and of course the missing Wall Street Journal reporter as well. But it certainly is interesting. The timing is well beyond coincidental. This is indeed planned, and this is based on what I've determined. And I'm still investigating this with more to come. And there will be more deaths. Let me just say this: there will be more people who will meet an untimely demise under the pretext of suicide or just simple disappearance here in the United States as well as other countries.
Right, and it's such an important issue, and for whatever reason, it's not being reported. If there were 7 rock stars who had killed themselves, or 7 actors that had, mysteriously disappeared or suicided themselves, we would definitely be hearing about it. It'd be all over the news.
Exactly, and so that's another aspect here that we have to look at. What is the media doing? They're not only not reporting this, in my view, whether it's CNBC, MSNBC, you name the network, by not reporting these ties and this as one large story, based on what I can come up with, they're complicit in keeping from the American public what is to come, as well as these people and their poor families.
Exactly. Well, Doug, thank you so much for your insight. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you can keep up to date on all of Hagmann's latest stories at HomelandSecurityUS.com. And of course, we will keep you up to date with all the latest breaking news at Infowars.com. The latest story is up there today on the 7th banker who has died under mysterious circumstances. Thank you for watching the Infowars Nightly News tonight. We'll see you here tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central.
The globalists have controlled the mainstream media for a long time, but now they're expanding, making the weaponization even more vicious and deceptive. All the major networks are state-run.
We are partnering this year with the NFL.
The NFL has become a political weapon against the Second Amendment and pushes Obamacare. MSNBC tells us that our children belong to the state.
We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities.
The brainwashing media machine has been turned up on high, and it's time for humanity to double down on the true people's media and strike back against the tyrants that are destroying our civilization with their lies and fraud. We are the resistance. You are the resistance. You are the InfoWar. It is more important than ever to realize that we are not the alternative media. We are the true media. The establishment dinosaur press is dying.
We are in an information war, and we are losing that war.
Join us at InfoWarsNews.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. Members can share their memberships with up to 11 people. By subscribing, you will literally be buying war bonds in the InfoWar to expand our operation in the face of the tyrants. Join us at PrisonPlanet.tv.